If your sister's not invited, we're not coming either. Dad snapped like I'd committed some moral crime. The room went quiet. My fiancé looked stunned. And I just stood there, realizing he'd made his choice, again. You'd think after 2 decades of playing peacemaker, I'd get a say in my own wedding. But no. Not when it came to her. Hi everyone, my name is Melanie, I'm 32, and I was raised in the shadows of a girl who could burn down a house and still be handed the last piece of cake. When we were little, she'd steal from me, lie about it, cry, and somehow I'd be the one grounded. She's sensitive, Mom would say. She's just going through a phase, Dad would sigh. But that phase lasted 20 years. And I played along. I kept peace. I let her win. Birthdays? She ruined them. Graduation? She made a scene. Even at my engagement dinner, she wore white, made jokes about how long I'd been alone, and took over the toast with a story about her promotion. Still, I defended her. I begged people to be patient with her. I covered for her outbursts. I tried so hard to be the bridge. Until my own wedding became the battlefield. I'd finally set one boundary. No, she's not invited, I told my parents. Not after what she did at Grandma's funeral. They gasped like I'd murdered someone. Dad leaned forward, shaking. She's your sister, he said. If she's not invited, we're not coming either. Not a second of hesitation. Not even a blink. I looked at the RSVP list. 20 years of bending over backward. And now, for the first time, I stood straight. I said, okay then. Dad's face fell. He expected me to beg. To fold. To fix it. But I didn't. I let the silence sit like a stone between us. And for the first time, I saw panic flicker behind his eyes. Not because I'd pushed them away. But because he realized I might not come running back. And just like that, the family's favorite bridge started to burn. I didn't cry when they left. I didn't chase them down the driveway. I didn't send long texts explaining myself. Instead, I crossed out 4 names on the guest list. Mom, Dad, my sister, and her forever boyfriend who still owes me $900 from a family emergency 5 years ago. My fiancé, Ethan, watched me. Carefully. Like I was a glass he wasn't sure would shatter or finally hold its shape. Are you okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Better than I've felt in years. Because what they never realized was, every time I let her win, every time I swallowed my truth for their comfort, a part of me disappeared. Until there was barely anything left to invite to my own wedding. The next day, the phone calls started. First Mom, voicemails that danced between guilt and gaslight. Melanie, this isn't like you. You're breaking the family apart. Then Dad, cold and short. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. But I was done being the reasonable one. I was the one who picked up the pieces, apologized for scenes I didn't cause, gave up holidays, swallowed birthdays, smiled through bruises she never left on my skin but carved straight into my identity. Ethan said something that stuck. You're not losing your family. You're losing the people who never acted like one. That night, we sent out the final seating chart. Table 5, reserved for friends who became siblings. Table 6, reserved for Ethan's aunts who sent me handwritten letters after my graduation. And the head table? Just us. No drama. No apologies. No ghosts pretending to love me in exchange for silence. And while the world outside spun in chaos, for once, my world stood still. I finally understood. Sometimes the loudest betrayal is the silence you break, by choosing yourself. And that choice? It echoed louder than any toast they could have given. The wedding was perfect. Not magazine spread perfect. Not influencer staged perfect. But soul deep, laughter through tears, no fake smiles kind of perfect. Sunlight poured in like forgiveness through the stained glass windows of the old library we'd rented. My dress? Off-white, simple, nothing like the glittery gowns my sister mocked me for loving when we were kids. And when I walked down the aisle, every step felt like I was reclaiming something she'd tried to steal my whole life. Ethan cried. Not performatively. Not for the cameras. But the kind of tears that come from someone who saw every version of you, even the ones you were told to hide, and still said I do. But then, during dinner, my cousin Lily tapped my shoulder. Her eyes flickered. Hey, your parents are outside. I laughed. I genuinely laughed. They are not invited. I know, she said. But they're standing across the street. Just watching. And sure enough, through the frosted glass doors, I saw them. Mom in her pearl cardigan. Dad with his arms crossed. And next to them, my sister. In white. Again. Like this was her redemption arc. They didn't walk in. Didn't shout. Didn't cause a scene. They just stood there. Like they expected I'd come out. Like they still believed I was the kind of daughter who'd drop everything to fix the mood. Lily touched my arm. Do you want me to say something? I shook my head. No. Let them look. Because that's all they ever did, really. Looked at me like I was the backup singer in my sister's solo act. Watched me bend, fold, disappear, and applauded her performance. But now? I was center stage. And I wasn't performing for them anymore. So I raised my glass. To the family I chose. To the girl I rebuilt. To the woman who finally stopped begging for a seat at the table and built her own damn hall. And as they faded behind the glass, I danced. Not to be seen, but to finally feel free. 2 days after the wedding, the guilt campaign began. An envelope slid under our apartment door, no return address, just familiar handwriting. Mom's. I recognized the loops in the MS, the soft tilt of her YS, the same script that once signed birthday cards with "Love you more than words." Inside, a folded note. You've humiliated this family. I hope you're proud of what you've done. Your sister hasn't stopped crying. Your father says he doesn't recognize you anymore. No apology. No accountability. Just shame dressed as disappointment. I placed it on the kitchen counter and didn't say a word. Ethan walked in, saw it, scanned my face. She's trying to pull you back in, he whispered. Don't go. I didn't. But I did start remembering. How many notes I'd written them over the years. Birthday cards for a father who never once asked how my interviews went. Get well letters for a mother who never noticed when I was breaking. Forgiveness texts after my sister's blow-ups, always starting with "I'm sorry you're upset." They trained me to think love was earned through endurance. But what they never expected was that the girl who endured would eventually evolve. Later that week, I posted a photo. Me and Ethan on the dance floor, my heels in one hand, my head thrown back in laughter. The caption was short. Peace looks good on me. Hours later, I got a message request. From my youngest cousin, Ava. Only 14, but wise beyond it. You looked so happy. I wish I could have been there. I'm sorry for how they treated you. That message meant more than 100 fake family hugs. Because the truth is, sometimes you don't get justice from the people who wronged you. You get it from the ones who watched. And learned what not to become. And Ava? She was already breaking the cycle, just by seeing me choose peace. That's when I knew. The legacy I left behind wasn't silence. It was a blueprint. A week passed. Then 2. The silence from my parents wasn't peaceful, it was strategic. I knew that pattern too well. And right on cue, the trap came next. A Facebook post from Mom. Public. Polished. Poisonous. Weddings are meant to unite, not divide. We raised both our daughters to love each other. It breaks our hearts to be excluded from moments we should have shared. We pray for healing. The comments flooded in. Sending love, Auntie. Families fight, but blood is forever. You'll all be together again soon. You deserve better than this, Linda. And though it was. The narrative flipped. The villains disguised as victims. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were painting me cold, heartless, ungrateful, to every friend, cousin, ex-neighbor, church lady, and grocery store auntie who would listen. I didn't reply. But I screenshot everything. Because some storms are better documented than denied. The hardest part wasn't the lies. It was realizing how many people wanted to believe them. People who'd watched me get interrupted at family dinners, talked over at every reunion, blamed when my sister had another breakdown over someone else's success. People who'd seen me shrink, and mistook it for peacekeeping. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I wrote my own post. Private. Just for close friends and family. I didn't exclude my sister from my wedding out of malice. I did it out of survival. I have spent 20 years being the family's cushion, absorbing every hit to keep the peace. This year, I chose to protect my peace instead. If that makes me the villain in someone else's story, so be it. I finally became the main character in mine. No hashtags. No emojis. Just truth. And the silence that followed? That was different. Because this time, it wasn't the silence of guilt. It was the silence of power shifting. And once I felt that, there was no going back. A month after the wedding, my sister messaged me. Not a call. Not a voice note. Just a grey bubble on a screen. Happy now? You've officially turned everyone against me. Hope your little fairy tale was worth it. No greeting. No reflection. Just blame wrapped in bitterness. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over reply. Not because I had anything to say, but because part of me still itched to explain. That part of me, the old Melanie, was addicted to justification. She lived on the approval of people who didn't even respect her silence, let alone her voice. But I'd buried her the day I said I do. Instead, I sent back one word. Healed. That's all. No punctuation. No emotion. Just truth. And I blocked her right after. Ethan walked into the room as I tossed my phone onto the couch. You okay? He asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah, actually, I think I am. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet moment when you realize their drama no longer owns your breath. That same night, I got an unexpected call. From my Aunt Rosa. The only one who ever pulled me aside at gatherings and whispered, "You don't deserve this. I see what they are doing." She'd stayed quiet at the wedding. Sent a polite gift, didn't take sides. But now? Now she spoke. Mel, she said, her voice soft and shaking. Your story, your post, it made me realize how much we've all enabled. I'm sorry I didn't say more. I sat down, heart racing. Not because I needed her apology, but because I never thought I'd get one. I've started therapy, she continued. You inspired me. That's when it hit me. My silence never changed them. But my boundaries? They lit fires in the places they thought would stay cold forever. Because healing isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to let the pain repeat itself through you. And that refusal? It becomes a ripple. A mirror. A movement. Weeks turned into months. The messages slowed. The guilt faded. The family group chat I was once glued to? Silent. Like a house that finally accepted its last tenant moved out. And in the quiet, something grew. Peace, yes, but also clarity. I started looking back. Not to reopen wounds, but to trace their origin. Like the time I was 10 and won a spelling bee, but Dad took us for ice cream because my sister cried about losing her pencil case. Or my 18th birthday. The one where they cancelled dinner last minute because she had a migraine. It was never about me. Not really. I was a placeholder. The good daughter. The responsible one. The glue. Until one day I melted. And they blamed me for the mess. But the truth? I wasn't the one who broke the family. I was just the first one brave enough to stop pretending it wasn't already broken. One afternoon, Ethan found me going through old boxes, photos, letters, handmade cards from when I still believed love could be earned if I just tried hard enough. He sat beside me, watching as I held a photo of me at age 7. Smiling. Hopeful. Still unaware she'd spend the next 2 decades walking on eggshells in her own home. What would you tell her now? He asked gently. I stared at the little girl in the picture. My voice caught. But I found the words. I'd tell her she's not too much. She's not selfish. She's not wrong for wanting peace. And one day, she'll stop apologizing for the way she shines. Ethan took the photo and tucked it into a new frame. We placed it on our bookshelf, next to our wedding album. A reminder of who I was, and who I refused to become. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire or fury. It's healing so loudly, they can't pretend they didn't hear it. And that healing? It finally reached the one person I never thought it would. Last week, I got a letter. Real paper. Real envelope. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Dad's. I stared at it for a long time. The old me would have opened it instantly, heart racing, already crafting a reply in her head. But this version of me? She took her time. Ethan sat beside me as I peeled it open. The letter was short. Melanie, I've read your post a dozen times. I didn't want to believe it, but maybe you're right. Maybe we failed you. Maybe I let her become everything she is. Because I was too afraid to admit how much damage she'd done. I don't know how to fix this. But I do know. I miss you. And if you ever decide to come back, I'll listen this time. No defense. No excuses. Just me. Dad. I folded the letter gently. Ethan waited. Do you want to write back? I thought about it. About how many letters I'd written in my head as a child. Begging to be seen, to be heard, to be chosen. And now, the letter had finally come. But I realized something. Forgiveness didn't need to live in a reply. It could live in the way I carried myself now. The boundaries I built. The life I created. The silence I no longer feared. Because poetic justice doesn't always look like public apologies or grand gestures. Sometimes, it's this. A daughter finally being understood, but no longer needing to be. I placed the letter in a drawer. Not to frame it. Not to reread it. But to remind myself. I broke the pattern. My children will never learn love through silence. They'll never confuse peace with suppression. They'll grow up watching a woman who chose her worth over tradition. And won. I looked at Ethan. Smiled. No need to write back. I already said everything I needed, by living. He kissed my forehead and whispered, I'm proud of you. And for the first time in my life, so was I.